But in between my flip, I took an interim job. And this was so crucial for me because when I left my social work job, I was very burnt out and I actually needed, I know sometimes people call it a bridge job. So instead of quitting cold turkey, I knew I needed to bring some money in. I took a job as a leasing agent at the front office of an apartment complex. And that was really nice to be able to just do some administrative tasks. I also got myself into counseling and just had like a 6-month period of healing and then started my job search again. So I don't know if that resonates with the audience, but it was a perfect move for me in between the flip.
Welcome to the Career Flipper Podcast. I'm your host and fellow career flipper, Jenny Dempsey. This whole podcast thing started because, well, after getting laid off and reevaluating my entire career path, I got really curious. How do people actually make these huge career changes, or flips as I like to call them? And how do they keep going when things get really messy and really confusing? That curiosity led me here to having real conversations with people from all kinds of industries and places around the world about their career journeys. If you're in the middle of a career change or know someone who is, share this episode with them and hit subscribe for new episodes every single Thursday. My guest today is Annie Cole, a financial coach from Vancouver, Washington, who has flipped her career multiple times. She started out in social work, moved into education, then ed tech, and eventually took the leap to start her own coaching business, helping women take control of their finances. We get into the ups and downs of career changes, the realities of entrepreneurship, and why you don't need to have it all figured out before making a move. And just a quick heads up, I had a little bit of a cold while recording this, so sorry in advance for any scratchy voices and sniffles, but I really hope you get a lot from this episode, and I can't wait for you to dig in. Let's go now. So Annie, you literally found the Career Flipper podcast by typing career podcast into a search engine. Is that right?
Yes, I was just looking to connect with more people that are passionate about career growth in general. And I love that you're focused on career flipping because I've done many career flips in my life. I think it is something that's very taboo and frowned upon and people are afraid of. So I'm excited to talk about it.
I love that. I love that you found me. That was such a boost. I was like, ooh, wow, I'm searchable. And yeah, your career flips, the multiple flips. I love that the S, it's a plural. And I think it's plural for a lot of people. And we sometimes don't bring that up because exactly what you said, what's attached to it? There's that stigma. So I'm really excited to get into this conversation with us today. First of all, Annie, tell everybody who you are, where you are, and what you're doing now. And then we'll dive into everything that got you to where you're at today.
Yeah. So I'm over on the West Coast. I'm in Vancouver, Washington. My name is Annie Cole. I do have a doctorate in education research. So sometimes I go by Dr. Annie Cole, but definitely not a medical doctor by any means. And I'm a financial coach. So this year I launched my own business. It's called Money Essentials for Women. And I do financial coaching. I have tons of financial resources for women. Everything from negotiating your salary, getting a raise, to budgeting, taxes, savings, debt, anything related to money, we can talk about it.
I love that nothing's off the table because money is what's the word for it? I would say crunchy subject. Mm-hmm. Really uncomfortable. And honestly, after this episode, I'll probably pepper you with a bunch of questions because I'm trying to figure that part out too. But how did you get to this point, Annie? You said you have your doctorate. So how did all of this happen? How did this begin?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different phases to the flips in my career. So phase one was going off to college. I thought I'm going to be a mental health counselor. I'm going to study psychology. I knew I wanted to study psychology and truly help people. So I got my bachelor's degree and my first job out of college was as a social worker. I actually worked in domestic violence and it was so eye-opening. It was so rewarding. I got to just connect people with resources. So housing, clothing, food, emotional support. I loved it, but it was just, unfortunately for me personally, I took it home and it was too heavy. So I thought, I want to help people, but I need to do something lighter. So at that point, I made a flip from there into education. So I thought, well, I like this peer support of helping people, but let's do something a little lighter and make it in the academic realm. So I moved onto the college campus and started working with students as an academic advisor. But I will say, I don't know if you want to go into this, but in between my flip, I took an interim job. And this was so crucial for me because when I left my social work job, I was very burnt out and I actually needed, I know sometimes people call it a bridge job. So instead of quitting cold turkey, I knew I needed to bring some money in. I took a job as a leasing agent at the front office of an apartment complex. And that was really nice to be able to just do some administrative tasks. I also got myself into counseling and just had like a 6 month period of healing and then started my job search again. So I don't know if that resonates with the audience, but it was a perfect move for me in between the flip.
Yeah. And that definitely, I feel like that resonates for the audience as well as I hear that myself. And I think there are some people out there that feel like when we're in a stressful role, we kind of think, oh, it's us. Like I can't handle it. But it sounds like for you, you knew that you could handle something different. This wasn't the right fit. Like it wasn't your fault. It wasn't the job's fault. It just wasn't the right fit. And you took the necessary steps to take care of yourself without sacrificing, bills and all of those things. You knew it was necessary. How did you know, or actually, was that ever anything that crossed your mind of like, oh, I can't handle this. I studied to do this. I can't do it. I'm not gonna, or was that ever a part of your experience, or was it very much clear of like, this just isn't a good fit. I need to move on. How did that kind of work for you?
That's a great question. There were a couple of things. So I started to feel the emotional burnout at home, and that turned into physical impacts, like just being very sleepy and feeling a little bit more melancholy and just not as excited with regular everyday activities. So that started showing up. But then also there are lots of tools, and I cannot remember the name of this tool, but it was basically a burnout inventory that had been developed by psychologists. And it was a list of questions to ask yourself to see if you're experiencing burnout. And my supervisor had handed it out to a lot of us at work just because a lot of folks do feel burnt out in that realm. And I answered the questions and I found myself saying, oh, wow, I'm actually a yes to a lot of these things. So that inventory is what sparked me to finally realize, okay, this isn't just the job is hard. Maybe the job is actually causing something deeper as a health outcome. And at first I did think, maybe it's me, maybe I'm doing something wrong. And then I started to notice the people around me that were really successful in the job, they had a different personality than me. They had a different life philosophy than me. And so I realized, yeah, there's people that can be great at one thing. And then there's people that maybe aren't, and it just wasn't for me.
Yeah, that's a great way to just describe that. And then, so you went from there and you took that knowledge and you went to what you now call as a bridge job. Did you know that at the time that it was a bridge job, or did you think that I'm just going to take anything I could get to get my mind back into a better place? What was that like?
Yeah, I knew it was a bridge job and I was searching for a bridge job. So I remember giving notice at work, knowing I wasn't going to do that job anymore. And I literally took my resume and I drove around for a week straight and I applied for anything from a coffee shop job to front desk jobs. And I was very specific that I wanted to do something that was no longer in psychology and something that I thought would let my brain heal.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then luckily enough, I got an offer in that week and started the job, and it was just a great fit.
Wow. So you're there, you're working at this leasing office. And then what happens from there?
So I started to heal and really take care of myself. And that's when I thought, what can I take from what I loved from my old work into my next phase of work? So I thought, I love the helping people part. I love the consulting, the conversations, the connecting to resources. So I started applying to jobs in higher education to get a job on a college campus. So I finally got that job. And I did quite a few different things on the college campus I was at. So I worked with first generation college students, first year students, eventually became an academic advisor and focused specifically on helping teachers, people who wanted to become teachers. So it was just a ton of fun. And then while I was there, they had this amazing program where they would pay for 95% of your tuition to get additional degrees. It was fabulous. So yes. And of course I'm a big learner. So I got my master's in higher ed. And then that's also when I got my doctorate in education. So it was just such a fun time. I learned so much and got to work with so many students and I really loved those jobs.
Wow. So when you were working at that job, you were also in school. So you were doing both at the same time?
Yes, I did for 5 years straight. I went to school
Wow.
and I worked full time. It basically, it was really funny when I finished my doctorate. My husband and I were joking that I didn't even know what to do with my free time because for 5 years I was just
Right.
morning to night busy.
Oh my gosh. So after you graduated, what happened? What did you do next?
So I graduated and I thought, okay, I'm going to make another pivot, but there was a through line. So I had loved education. My doctorate had focused on education, but also research skills. So how to study the impact of different educational programs to see if they're really impacting students in the way we think and we hope that they do. So I went off to work for an ed tech company as a research analyst. And I was just all in the data. I was running surveys, interviewing people, doing user experience research, really just trying to figure out what the data was telling us so that we could give the best supports to teachers in our programming.
So that kept you busy. And now
Yes.
you're in like a tech role. Were you in an office? Were you remote? What was that kind of like work culture like?
It was really fun. It was 100% remote, but they were a brand new startup. There were two teachers working in Washington, D.C. public schools. They had created this innovative teaching model. I think I was number 5 of their hires. So I was very early on hired. And it was, very grassroots, just a group of people who are passionate about education and changing the world. And we would all get on Zoom and talk about what we were doing. Also, everyone got to wear every single hat possible because we're a team of 8 people at a startup. So I loved it so much.
Did you ever take a look back and think, 5 years ago, I was really burnt out and it sounds like depressed in a role that wasn't a good fit. And now look what I'm doing. Like, was there ever a moments? Yeah. What was that like?
There were many moments back then where I felt like I'm so glad I did the work to keep internally reflecting on what am I really good at? What lights me up? What can I do to impact the world? Because there's a difference, at least I have found, in when I was younger thinking I want to help people. And it's hard to know what that really meant. I just know I wanted to help people. And then as I got older and I realized, for example, when it comes to research, I really love problem solving, and I love problem solving specifically by crunching numbers. That's so specific, but I wouldn't have learned that until I had all of these experiences that I was exposed to. So sometimes it takes time to know what's going to light you up at work.
Yeah, that's a really good rule of thumb because I think a lot of people are like, where's my calling? I need to find it. I need to figure it out. But it can take years and it can take many random twists and turns, I feel like, to find it. Okay, so you're at this ed tech company, you're working remote. It's a great work culture. You're having fun wearing the many hats and enjoying all the number crunching. And so how long did you do that?
I was there for 4 years. So I started as a research analyst. About 5 months later, I was doing so much that they promoted me to become a director. So I was the director of research there. Okay. And then slowly started hiring more staff underneath me and some vendors and some contractors. And then by the time I was finished, I was their vice president. So I worked underneath the CEO and really just helped them do everything with data. So I was building out their data system, doing research, and then bringing the data back to the executive leadership team and saying, here's what we're finding. Here's what we need to do to change the product, to change our sales process, to change our marketing. And so I had my fingers in every single part of the organization and was just trying to pull it together through the data that I was crunching. That's
a lot. That's a lot of, and I could see how that like fills your bucket of like the research and problem solving and helping people in a very unique way. Whether it's your teammates or, the people that are getting, the most out of what you're building. And so you're moving forward and you're doing amazing. So is there another pivot after this or? What happens?
There was another pivot. I think I'm going to be eternally pivoting. I think
I
that's
love
just part
it.
of my life.
Yeah.
So after I left the college, I worked at this ed tech startup. It was my first job after getting my doctorate degree, and I stayed there for 4 years. So it felt like the perfect experience, the perfect first job after that. But what I really learned working at a startup was about how the business worked. So it was interesting because I knew a lot about business. And then I had this personal passion that was kind of unrelated to my work, but it was a passion for personal finance. And that was really popping up in my personal life because as I was making more money, I was climbing the ladder. I found myself in this new world of, okay, I'm not struggling financially anymore, but I have no idea how to plan for retirement, how to invest, how to really make the most of this new money and maybe move into more of building wealth and a legacy instead of struggling. So I started talking with friends about it. I found out that other women in my life also didn't know a lot about finance. And so I decided this year to leave my vice president role and to start my own business, creating a financial resource center for women. So what I do now is one-on-one financial coaching, but I also offer online courses, resources, free content, a lot of educational workshops. It's just all about teaching women what it means to manage your finances and get what you want out of your money.
That's a big pivot. You went from school and working at the school and then ed tech and really getting a feel for how the business operates by having your hand in all of the pots. And what was that moment like when you put in your notice of like, I'm leaving? What was that like? What was going through your mind at that time?
It was scary. It was really scary. And I didn't even intend to start my own business at that point. It was really funny because my husband and I were on vacation for Christmas break and we were in Hawaii. We were very, very away from work and finally tuned out. And as we were sitting there, we thought maybe one of us, we both are crazy busy all the time. Maybe one of us should take a step back and work less. And then we'll just be able to have a little bit more of a flexible schedule. So I said, I should do it. It should be me. Let me work a little bit less and go into a very part-time role with my employer and give notice. Mm-hmm. And so I came back in January and I gave notice. And of course, my CEO was shocked and was like, oh, what's happening? But said, we'd very much want to keep you around. So let's set up a contract. So I thought, I'll just be contracting part-time for a while. This will be great. But then the achiever in me immediately started thinking about all of these other things I wanted to do, including the financial business. And I thought, this is a perfect time. I'm just going to jump on it. So it ended up working out.
So you took the leap and you started your own business. And it sounds like from the things that you learned about running the business, I mean, especially like the marketing things, like how to even create a course, how to, all of these workshops, like how to promote your business, how to make a website, like the simplest of things, but they're going to make a big impact. So Are those things that you really learned at the startup, or were there mistakes along the way, trial and errors? Like, how did it kind of come to fruition that it all just came together?
It's definitely been a work in progress. I would say the work at the startup was 95% of it, though. It was so incredibly helpful. I had helped, I wasn't responsible for their website by any means, but I had created web pages. I create all my own social media content. I had written a ton. So I have done a lot of media features, and I just knew a lot about how to do the basics from that business experience. Mm-hmm. What I have leaned into though since then, and I would highly encourage anyone thinking about starting a business, is to find a mentor or a coach. I've had a couple coaches along the way so far and probably will continue to have them, but each step of the way, whatever I feel like is the most difficult, I've hired a coach for. So at first I worked with a PR person. They helped me get a lot of publicity. And then most recently, I've been working with a social media coach to learn more about social media strategies. So I think that's just helped highlight the areas where I felt maybe the weakest.
Yeah. Ooh, that's great. And I think it's so powerful to ask for help. Like, yes, the ability to ask for help. And just kind of a side note, where do you usually find your coaches? Is it just going to Google and searching in? Do you have a resource? Where did you find these coaches? How do you trust that they're going to give you the right information?
I've found all of my coaches through social media. And most of the time, I just will I'll see some content that I like. I'll follow someone for quite a while. And then if I feel like their content is a good fit, I've reached out to them to inquire more about exactly what kind of programs and coaching they offer. The PR person, we just hit it off right away. We both loved personal finance. So we ended up meeting to talk about one of my budgeting spreadsheets. And then I found out what she did and I thought, okay, I need to work with you. And then social media person definitely was on Instagram. And I just saw some of her content and then we got connected and I decided to learn more.
I love that. That's awesome. And it's great when it's a good connection, because I think working with people when it's not can make it a little challenging, especially for personal branding. But Annie, I'm going to jump back to something that you said a little bit ago, because I think this is really important, at least from my experience in starting my own business. But you mentioned that you're on vacation with your husband and you were having this conversation, and that one person should work a little bit less so you could have more of a flexible schedule. So I'm wondering, you start your own business, most of the time you're working like double and triple. So how did that work out for you?
I know. Yeah. So of course, as you're alluding to, what's crazy is I probably work more now. It's hard to say. I think I work actually about the same amount of hours as I used to work, but the work is so much more rewarding and my schedule is so much more flexible. So the nice thing is my husband is also an entrepreneur and a business owner. So we both have this ultimate flexibility and the ultimate demand of owning a business. So we honestly get along really well in that aspect because we get to lean into work whenever we need to. Like if he's on a business call while we're driving somewhere, it's just expected. Or if I'm responding to an email, we have a lot of boundaries that we set up to protect ourselves, but we're constantly ebbing and flowing with what the business needs and we're both doing it. So it's kind of nice in that way to have someone else in the same boat.
There's like solidarity there. You're like, okay, we understand. We're in this together. Yeah. We can grow this. So your journey has had a lot of changes, and there's been times where you knew internally or intuitively, I should say, that it wasn't the right fit. And then you found your way to the right fit. And it was kind of through opportunities. Like, for example, would you have gone back to school had the school not offered you 95% of tuition paid? Like, I mean, if that wasn't available to you, do you think you would have gone back to school?
It's interesting you asked that because when I first started at the college, when I decided to make that pivot after the leasing agent job, I did a lot of research online on how to break into the college campus because it's actually very hard to get a job on a college campus. It's extremely competitive and they oftentimes require a master's degree for even an entry-level job. Or a person with that degree is preferred. So when I got my first job, I thought I need to get this master's degree to move up within the college. So I always intended on getting my master's, but I don't think I would have gone on and gotten my doctorate without the tuition support. My financial side of me would have said, don't go into the debt to do this unless you know what the benefit's going to be. So I probably would have weighed that a little bit differently if I wasn't getting such a huge tuition benefit.
Yeah. And I think that's an important note because sometimes we have opportunities presented to us that we don't take advantage of because we're just, for whatever reason, maybe there's an inner voice speaking or maybe we're scared. And so being open to the opportunities and really evaluating what is going to work and what's not, and kind of taking that leap from that point, because it sounds like this was the right opportunity. There was still a little bit that you had to pay. And then you made your way to where you are now, even though at that time you had no clue that that's where it was going to land, I'm sure. So, So now you're doing this and you're helping women. And I mean, there's so much education around money that we don't get on a regular basis, that it's kind of locked up. It's confusing. It's very overwhelming and it's uncomfortable. And so a lot of people listening to the podcast are people who maybe are sitting at their desk right now and they have a well-paying job, but they don't like it and they want to change, but they don't know how to, because they still got a family to feed. They got bills to pay. They got things going on. Or
Yep.
they want to start a business on the side, and there's always going to be some money that needs to go into it, even if it's on the side. So
Yep.
how to, kind of delegate funds. Do you have advice for people like that are kind of like lingering on this decision and knowing that that's exactly what they want to do, but money is just such a challenge that they're not deciding to make the pivot simply because it's hard?
Yeah. I totally understand. I think that is probably one of the number one things that keeps people from making a move either in their career or their business. I would say for your career, one thing to consider is I would say crunch the numbers and know what you minimally need to bring in to cover your expenses to be able to make a move. And sometimes taking a move to something that's paying less, if it's going to put you on a trajectory to move up, is going to be more helpful. So, for example, I took one time while I was working in the college, I took one specific job that was working on a research grant. And I took that right before I got the ed tech job. And that was one of the reasons they said they hired me, was because I had this federally funded research experience, and it really bolstered my resume. I only did that for 1 year, but it was very intentional. And I think I took a 10K pay cut, but then I ended up getting a 30K pay raise when I took the next job. So intentional changes are really important as long as you can cover your minimal expenses. And then on the business side, what I would say is two things. Number one, do not quit your job cold turkey to start your business. Start it on the side. There's so many things you can do. And then number two, there are so many tools that are completely free to start your business. So if you're thinking, oh, I have to take out loans or use all my savings to start my business, sometimes you do, depending what you want to do. If you're opening a brick and mortar business shop. But if you're doing something online, a lot of times you can set up a free calendar. You can set up a payment processing portal really easily. You can send emails and create a website almost all for free. So definitely lean on the free resources first and make sure you like it. And you can build your way up to paying for some of those extra things.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. There's so many free tools out there to use,
Mm-hmm.
to start a mailing list, to create a website, all the things. And it's amazing how easy it is to take advantage of it. On the side, like, you don't have to give up your full-time job. But I really like how you think about the intentional kind of shift to the job where I'm going to take this pay cut for this amount of time because I know it's going to lead to something in the future. And I think that's something that a lot of people don't talk about, because we hear, oh, pay cut. Ooh, that's harsh. Why'd you do that? But
Mm-hmm.
really, when we think about it in the long term of our career path, it makes sense. It makes
Yeah.
sense. And you knew that, and it makes sense why you did it. And so for people who, I don't know, I guess because there's sometimes where, like, for example, maybe we take a pay cut to work at a startup. And that startup, you think, okay, this is going to be like my career foundation. I'm early on in the, employee lineup. However, the startup doesn't pan out, or, the project doesn't pan out if you take on contract work on the side. What's some advice for someone who may take that risk, or, that second job or that second opportunity, and it doesn't
Mhm.
pan out?
Yeah, I think the first thing is don't be too harsh on yourself. None of us can know. I mean, I personally have taken a lot of different risks and they don't always work out. There were times that I applied for jobs and I thought for sure it was a shoe in and I didn't get the offer. Or times even in my business where I have started offering a product and tried testing it out and no one was interested. And that I just don't let it hit me personally anymore, because I would rather be taking these risks and testing things out and then finding the next best thing. So I would say the best thing you can do is lean into, what did you learn from that? Is it, if it was a business venture, was it not really something that was a market fit? Not enough people wanted it? Or did you not have enough awareness? Like, did you send 2 emails and decide no one was interested? It can take a long time to build up clientele.
Yeah.
So what was it that made it not work out? And can you either revise it and try again, or is it time to pivot again and try something different?
Yeah. Yeah. That's excellent advice. And it's very realistic. We can all apply that to our lives. And
Yeah.
So you mentioned that, you're probably going to be pivoting all the time. And you're doing great work right now. And I do want to talk a little bit more about the work that you're doing. But I want to ask you this question first is there, an intuition right now of like something calling to you of like your next steps? Or are you in a place right now where you're like, no, I'm going to take what I am going to learn from this, move forward? Where are you kind of at with that?
I feel pretty good sticking with where I'm at. I think I just started my business, so it's very small. And my vision is to continue growing this business and really leaning into creating more resources. I think right now I'm doing financial coaching and I'm just hearing from so many women that they want help with their debt or they want help with creating more income streams or starting a business. So I am personally just so excited to learn more about how I can make my services even better so that when people come to work with me, they have so many ideas and they have the exact strategy that's going to work. So that's what I'm looking at in the next couple of years, growing not only my caseload of people that I'm working with and my brand awareness, but making the services and products just really excellent.
Yeah, really fine tuning that. And I think that's great advice and reassuring a lot of serial flippers like you or that are listening to the show. Sometimes we get that itch of like, oh, I got to go do this, got to do this. And it's okay to be exactly where you are in the moment and to really like lean into that and just let it be what it is. And so, the work that you do with money and to help people. So you mentioned workshops and you mentioned there's, educational courses. Can you talk a little bit more about the offerings that you have available now that, if someone listening to the show wanted to pop on and see how they can get support from you, what would they find?
They can definitely reach out to me directly. So I do one-on-one coaching. I also offer free consultations before paid coaching because I just think it's so important when it comes to finances. If you're going to be vulnerable, you want someone that you trust. So if you ever want to set up a meeting with me, I do free 15-minute consults and we can just chat about your finances. And then if it is a fit, I do paid one-on-one coaching and we can either do one session where we do a deep dive into your finances and create a plan to reach your goals, or we can do packages of coaching where you continue to work together with me. In addition to that, I have lots of online resources. I would say one of the biggest sellers I have is a budgeting template. So it's this all-in-one budgeting template that includes everything from your income, your savings, your retirement. It's this all-in-one template that's pretty awesome. And then we're building out a directory of coaches with money essentials for women. So I can only take on so many clients. I'm building out a directory of coaches that can focus in different areas. So we have a debt specialist, we have tax specialists, we have career and business specialists. So if someone originally comes in and wants to talk about budgeting, maybe I'll work with them. And then they think, well, I really need help with my business tax strategy. So I'll refer them off to another coach. So I think I'm hoping that continues to grow so that we can have all of these collaborative coaches available for people to get the support they need.
That's an incredible wealth of resources that you're creating to support people. And Annie, that's incredible. Like from where you began in your career to where you're at today, the thing that I'm hearing that's weaving through everything is your ability to help others while taking the best care of yourself. And it sounds like you're really in a place where you can do both and really thrive. And that's amazing. And it's also really inspiring because we don't have to sacrifice our well-being if we want to make a career change. And at the end of the day, in order to take the best care of everyone else, we got to take the best care of ourselves. And so thank you for setting that example. And where can people find everything? How can they actually connect with you?
I think the best place to start is my website. So my company, again, is Money Essentials for Women. And the website is www.money-essentials.com. And on the homepage, you'll find all of my free resources that you can download. You can sign up for my weekly newsletter there. My social tiles are there, as well as all the coaches in my directory. You can be connected with them on the website as well. So that's the best place to go. And then again, if you do want to see if we're a good fit, you can sign up for a free consultation directly from there.
Amazing. Annie, thank you so much for finding me, for reaching out, for sharing your story on this episode. This is It's incredibly inspiring. And thank you for the work that you're doing to make us women feel more empowered and less freaked out about money. It's important work, and it takes a really good person to do that. And I am grateful for you. So thank you so much for being here today.
Yes. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Career Flipper podcast. To connect with Annie, be sure to check out her links in the show notes. If today's story resonated with you, or you know someone who's navigating their own career change, please share this episode with them. It could be exactly what they need to hear to keep moving forward. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you or someone you know has had a career flip and you want to share your story, I would absolutely love to hear it. Head over to thecareerflipper.com to be a part of a future episode. And remember, every single step you take counts. So keep taking those steps, keep going. Who knows where that next move might take you? What's the best that could happen?